This is a reading of Risk, Uncertainty, and Profit. It's a very popular book on the theory of competition by Frank Heinemann Knight. And when we are reading this book, we want to answer the question how competition can be termed a perfect competition. Because this is a chapter where Professor Knight is talking of what are the major or minor requirements for a theory of perfect competition. So this is quite applicable in our point of view as well because many of you are preparing for competitive exams, and you know that many people in our company, not company, country, most of them actually, they reward government exams as a very highly, and then we must also know what makes what lies behind the competitive exam, not in terms of the rewards and not in terms of the types of appreciation which are required, but in the sense of how these affect our identity, and are there any broader questions of competition which we are being subjected to by being uh, part of this process, and who has a parallel, who has given examples in parallel to these competitive processes. So let's see what we are uh, going to read now. So this is the seventh chapter, minor premises for perfect competition. So here it goes. Preliminary to a discussion of predatory activity or acquisition which is not production, we must again refer to the question of the ethical implications of the productivity analysis. The purely causal meaning of productivity in a scientific explanation of economic phenomena is apt to be confused with social or moral issues which belong in an entirely different sphere. We have insisted that the word produce in the sense of the specific productivity theory of distribution is used in precisely the same way as the word cause in scientific discourse in general. But the word cause itself is vague in ordinary speech, and it is natural that confusion should arise in regard to the economic synonym. For example, the socialists, with no lack of suggestion and justification from the loose usage of words by economists of non-socialistic schools, have insisted that all wealth is produced by labor. We need to do no more than mention the names of Smith and Ricardo in this connection, while among contemporary writers, Professor Taussig exemplifies the same practice. Okay, we should also say that the reverse is more correct, that labor does not produce all wealth, but may be entitled to all on ideal grounds. So here Professor Knight is making a very subtle point. He's saying that uh, we imagine that cause or what makes a person mm, a part of the social sphere or the unity of the social sphere is directly related to how the goods and services are produced. So if we say that the unit of production is uh, caused by the labor of the social and entities like the persons or something else, then we can say that directly, yes, wealth is produced by labor. But our professor is saying that no, labor does not produce all wealth, but may be entitled to all on ideal grounds. So labor may be entitled to all wealth on ideal grounds. And what are those ideal grounds? Okay. Inasmuch as any assertion of a cause and effect relation between particular events is always made on the ground of some special human interest or bias, there is much justification for such usage, but this only makes the more imperative a clear separation from the scientific use of causal terminology. So he is saying that whenever there are cause and effect relations between particular events are like the raining on 10th January and the Republic Day parade on 26th January. These are particular events. But if there are causal connections, we can say the bombing of Hiroshima was caused by something, the attack on Pearl Harbor. Okay, so if there is a causal connection between these two events, then there might be a special human interest or bias. Okay, so one type of usage, human usage, can be a justification for causal form of connection between particular events, but the nature of particular events like the bombings or the attacking, there are there need to be some scientific manner of explanation. Okay, so thus it is quite proper to say in ordinary speech that the cook prepares the meal, that the opening of the throttle of the locomotive by the engineer is the cause of the starting of the train, and that his failure to see the signal is the cause of the wreck and the deaths of the passengers. In an analogous way, a small group of agents might for some purposes be credited with nearly the whole output of a large establishment. Other things equal, the product depends on their cooperation. But it must be evident that scientific economics cannot use the word produce in this sense. The product of any productive service can, for scientific purposes, be only what we have defined it to be, that which is really dependent upon the service in question, that which can be produced by its aid and which cannot be produced without it. In the social situation as it is, allowing for the change in organization which would accompany its withdrawal from use, it follows that we cannot properly speak of the product of an economic factor, even if we use the word factor in the possibly legitimate sense of a group of physically interchangeable things. The product of labor, land, or capital as aggregates involves a still more illicit and meaningless use of terms. The only specific product which can be recognized is that of a single agent as such, an individual human being or machine, or such a parcel of land as is actually bargained for and used in the production process. And for perfect competition to take place, it must be negligible in size. So, the point which Professor Knight is making is that we usually associate cause and effect with things which uh, produce certain changes in the environment. So, if the accident happened and train collided with the something, that means the driver didn't pay attention to what was on the road or didn't give proper uh, notice to change the train's direction. So this is not a real sense of causation. Why? Because we explain things in this manner but does not necessarily. I don't know what exactly is the reason, but this is what Frank Knight is saying. So, how do we say that something is a product of an economic factor, even if we use the word factor? So, he's saying that labor, land, capital involves illicit use of terms. Capital, labor, land. The use of terms is illicit. It might be because we are aggregating things, aggregating factors, economic factors, aggregating the sense of the human being, and the only product which has the sense of a full sense is the individual human being or machine or such a parcel of land as is actually bargained for. So rather than indiscriminately using capital or money or labor, he uses a connected sense of individual human being and a land, but it should not be big. It should not be a big land. It should be a minuscule land. So let's see what exactly is important for here. More important, however, is the error of attributing any sort of moral significance to economic productivity. It is a physical, mechanical attribute attaching to inanimate objects quite as properly as to persons, and to non-moral or even immoral as well as virtuous activities of the latter. So let's stop it here.